All right. Got signal, Cottage Grove? You can just nod. Yeah, okay. All right, so do the last slide first without actually showing you it. Midterm goes out today. It's already on the Moodle site. You have 168 hours to complete it. So actually now, let's see, what is it? No, 170 hours to complete it. You don't have to take that long. Okay? There's 25 points worth of extra credit built into it relative to what it says on the syllabus. So don't need to trip about emailing your extra credit comments in so much, unless you'd like to. I'm a college professor, so I like to read. Part of the Black Men Who Read Too Much Club. So there are books basically covering a lot of the stuff. Well, actually, some of the memes that I've used have come from, as well as your assignment, has come from, I think this is like one, the top one is one of the bestsellers, Your Money or Your Life by Joe Dominguez and Vicki Robin. Credit, Cash, and Codependency. When Money is the Drug by Boundy. Wealthy Barber, whose author I forget. The Energy of Money by Maria Nemeth, which is kind of like a new agey consciousness thing about, where are you putting your money? How conscious are you of where you're putting your money? Millionaire Next Door by Thomas Stanley, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that series by Kiyosaki. So most of these are basically dealing with consumer level, or what I would call civilian level understanding of finance, because a lot of people don't necessarily think about long-term finances because it's a scary and uncomfortable thing for them to do that. Involves math anxiety, all kinds of stuff that they're not necessarily comfortable with. So when we're looking at what I call induced poverty, which is essentially don't tell them the hidden rules of power, which you notice we focus a lot of that stuff in this class, not just about money, but about other things. So for example, I was just, during the office hour, one of your classmates was talking about, okay, in my things that make me go, give it up paper, I want to give up high fructose corn syrup. Good luck. That's in everything. And if you're getting most of your meals from work, and work has a lot of high fructose corn syrup, so check that out. And also check it out in hidden stuff. So for example, if you work in a pizza joint, tomato sauce is naturally sweet, but is it artificially sweetened too? And what's going to be the artificial sweetener they use? Not aspartame, but high fructose corn syrup. So read your labels as long as you're into reading labels, because this person said, I didn't even pay attention to that stuff before this class. So that's kind of the idea, right? So with money, poverty might be an absence of wealth, accompanied by a lack of power and reinforced by a sense of learned helplessness. So when individuals are made to feel inadequate and unable to master certain tasks, they become actually unable to perform those in the tasks that are objectively within their grasp. i.e., people will say to you that you get into money problems because you have a lack of common sense, except that there is no place that you get common sense from, unless it's your family. Because, like 2 weeks ago when we were having the sex talk. So, right, if you didn't get the sex talk from your family, what's common sense in terms of contraception prevention and people using abortion as birth control? Don't get me wrong, I'm pro-choice. But by the time you've gotten to multiple abortions, your birth control is sloppy. okay? And that's a lack of education. So there are other things that are structured like that. And I've run into too many people as clients who came from upper middle class families, or as we call them, trust fundafarians, right? Where, you know, their grandparents came here as immigrants, made a bunch of money, their parents were born into that money, they pass on the trust fund to the kids so they don't actually have to work, but they still have a sizable income without working, and they don't have a skill with money. It's very similar to what happened with Indian casinos and giving their tribal members a per cap check of, you know, $5,000 a month without having to work for it. If you weren't taught how to deal with money, you're going to piss it away, whatever, right? So reinforce when they can't or don't access the information to prevent the problem or get them out of the problem, and the problem becomes more expensive to fix over time. Part of this reinforcement is also structural. This information is kept from you, even though it's supposed to be legally hidden in plain sight. Like, for example, your credit card app. Like, for example, you know, the long fine print within the bank. Like, for example, you know, I was tell you a story about we don't necessarily get into systemic discrimination within this class, except that I will be talking about a particular pattern, but there is a within the construct of black psychology. So there are 6 types of isms. So an ism is a structured system of discrimination based on particular characteristics. So when we talked about crash the other day, as we'll talk about crash today, there are, you know, under class-based discrimination is usually about money, access to money, right? So how you create ghettos is by a process called redlining, where, sorry I don't have the right color, but let's say that this is a city, and this is a particular neighborhood. So literally they would draw a red line around a particular neighborhood, and then we're not going to let certain kinds of people in this neighborhood. Or if we do, we'll charge them more for insurance, for mortgage, for all this other kind of stuff, and also deny them services. So the original term ghetto, or ghetto Island was an island literally off the coast of Italy where they sent Jews. And this is when Jews were basically, it was also a piece about race. So they were darker skinned because there were no European Jews before the 7th century AD, before 700 AD. So if you're dark skinned, well, you're Jewish. You have Jewish or Moorish blood, which in the Inquisition meant you're dark skinned. So we'll send you to this island to die. Ghetto is also a word for foundry. So in the Warsaw Ghetto, basically Jews were forced to live around this area that was dirty and smoky and polluted. Forced to live there. So ghettos are created for economic particular reasons. So a form of discrimination called redlining usually is around banking and finance. So if you apply for credit, we'll charge you more if you're a certain characteristic. If you live in a certain neighborhood, we'll charge you more. Right? So it's illegal. But in order to catch them at it, you have to know the rules first. So a year into my job at Lane Community College, I decided to buy a house. And my dad, who was a doctor, basically had a bunch of money that he needed to get rid of for tax purposes. So, okay, I'll go in with you on the house. So, anybody bought a house before? Okay. So, houses. The house that I'm in in 1992 cost $72,000, and so the down payment, normal down payment, is going to be like 3 to 5% of that, right? We were coming in with 20% down, because that's how much debt money had. I paid my measly little 7%, and Dad came up with 13%. Because I couldn't swing it on my own, because I was just a year into being a college professor, right? So, major investor, right? So, Dad said, when you fill out the loan application, do not check the box about race. Do not. And I won't either. It's voluntary for you. Okay, sure. Turn in the paperwork. He turns in my financials, turns in his financials. They see that he has $250,000 in discretionary income, and they decide, the house is appraised. They say, okay, we need another 5%. Now, mind you, most people already come in with 3 to 5%. We're coming in with 20 already. And they want another 5%. I go, why? Well, something was wrong with the appraisal. Well, what? You live in a below average desirability location. What? You mean I live in a ghetto? Because I happen to know from doing the history that black people weren't allowed within the city limits of Eugene before 1965, so there are no ghettos. That's why there are no ethnic neighborhoods, and don't tell me Whitaker. Nice try. It's not a ghetto, sorry. I live there. Where I'm from, ghettos don't have cherry trees and lawns. But, okay. So I say, what do you mean below average desirability location? Well, there's a insurance office and a doctor's office across the street from you, right? Yeah, so what's wrong with that? The doctor drives a Jaguar, I drive a Volvo. That's the richest cars on the block. Your point would be, rest is residential. What's your point here? How is that below average desirability? And by the way, didn't you used to pay black people to go to ghettos? Well, we didn't know you were black. What do you mean you didn't know I was black? Well, you didn't check the box, and your father didn't check the box either. Well, I've been working in Elaine for a year, but I worked for the feds before that. So I happen to know that it's voluntary for me to check the box, but when you get the box, when you get the application, you have to check the box for the feds, and you have to do it by visual identification. And what would you have checked with me? Is it my Choctaw cheekbones? I mean, my father's name is Hiawatha, but, Well, yeah, we checked African American. Okay, so why do you say you didn't know I was black? So first of all, I don't see why you're asking for another 5% when we're coming in with 20. That's one. Two, I think this is redlining. I said, well, yeah, they repeated it. We didn't know you were black. Stop, okay? Well, it's not us, it's Portland. Okay. I'll check with Dad first, because, this is whack. I'm sorry. It's whack. So check with Dad. And he says, yeah, that's why I told you not to check the box. He said, what do you want to do? I said, let me call the feds. If they have a regulator, then, I'm going to call the feds. So I do. And the feds say, that's redlining. I go, yeah, glad you said it. Didn't even have to give them the R. That's redlining. So I go back. Said, I'd like my file. Well, why do you want the file? I'm not trying to get another loan elsewhere. I want it for Gilbert Mora. Well, who's that? Well, that's head of Region 10 FDIC. He thinks you're doing redlining. So you tell Portland, your federal regulator is saying that you're trying to discriminate against me on the loan on the basis of race. I want a decision on my loan Monday. No more 5%. They caved. But again, think about if you didn't know your rights, if you didn't know the law, what they would do to you. Because another bank, the bank that I bank at, that was Key Bank that attempted the redlining. I mean, and actually it was a common practice. They tried to put me in an ARM, an adjustable rate mortgage. No, I want FHA fixed, not an ARM. Why are you sending me the paperwork for an ARM? I didn't do that. Oh, that's right, because you got caught sending a bunch of ARMs to minorities. Again, I didn't check the box with any bank that I'm in, but they do that, right? So part of the hidden rules of money is you have to know that they will basically stereotype you based on certain characteristics. And you best to be hip to the game. So as an example, part of induced poverty is not telling them the hidden rules of power. Then make them, so if you don't tell them the hidden rules of power, then you make them think that their failure is their own fault. So for example, being an employee is when you work for someone else to make money. A financial investment is when your money works for you by growing in a place that you can't immediately access it when it grows. So an investment is about your money works for you. You're not working for the money. An investment means that your money works for you. Usually being put in a place where it grows and you can't touch it. Usually an account, unless you're doing an investment on your own. So power is the capacity to be effective, the rules of the power of money. And I'm not going to put up all the rules because there's some that you have to discover on your own. But knowing is better than not knowing. Ignoring your money makes the problem grow bigger. So for example, with credit, making small payments is better than no payments at all, especially with doctor bills or whatever. So a lot of people will actually skip payments. Well, legally, as long as you pay something, they can't, for example, mess with you.
Or send you a garnishment.
Or send you a garnishment.
So if you're making payments,
yeah.
they can't.
You have to look at the fine print.
Sorry.
Okay? No, good question. Okay? As long as you're making payments, they're not necessarily going to do garnishment because they can't bankrupt you. Okay? You can only make payments, obviously, if you have a source of income. All right? But, again, that's why you have to read the fine print as to what they can or cannot do. And getting small payments is better than no payments, too, in terms of an investment. All right, so if you look at the rules of power, so electricity, for example, you don't mix it directly with water, especially salt water. You can use water to make electricity. You can use electricity to heat water. Both can be done following certain rules and certain structures. The rules for using any form of power are not immediately obvious. So, you've heard them say, money is power. Well, the reason that money can be powerful is you have to be conscious while you're using it. There are hidden rules, right? So, rich people, for example, don't necessarily know more about the rules of the power of money than those who are not rich, but there are structures in society that set it up that way so they can learn. But that doesn't guarantee, especially in the case of trust fundafarians, that they actually know. All they know is that more money is better than no money. Okay? And they're often shielded, rich people are often shielded from mistakes and wrongdoing. You know, my $3,500 lawnmower. I didn't know that, I treated the credit limit as if it was a goal and only paid the minimum payments. Instead of, really simply, I had the cash to buy the lawnmower outright. I should have just simply, instead of their $18 a month, paid $70 and paid the thing off in 6 months. The 6-month thing came from one of those money books. Okay, many people don't necessarily do that. So here is a crash worksheet. So I'm doing continual upgrades. So you heard me refer to this before. So this is systemic discrimination. Okay? So within this idea, which I haven't put up in slides before because I don't usually do this, but since I referred to a system of discrimination, this comes out of the literature in Black psychology and Black political science that studies, originally started with racism and then it got expanded to other forms of isms. And studying other forms of isms and how they interrelate is called intersectionality. All right? So, you have this basic acronym CRASH. In the latest iteration, the C is squared because classism is combined with militarism. Because who fights wars? Do the rich go to soldier? No. Who fights wars, right? And who profits from war making? So that's a class issue, right? So class, race, religion, and spirituality, addiction, ability, age, sexism, heterosexism. So type 1 ism is overt individual. They say something, they attack you, it's an overt attack by an individual. Type 2 is covert individual. They may or may not say something directly, but they're discriminating against you and without necessarily saying anything. It's in their actions. So obviously, type 1, they call me the N-word, or they attack me, or they call you a B, or they, whatever it is. Type 2, a group of Secret Service agents under Bill Clinton, black ones and white ones sitting in adjoining tables at Denny's. Right? So the white ones get served first, brought water, brought menus, brought their food. The black ones get ignored for 45 minutes by the same waitress working in the same section. They sued for discrimination and won, and then Denny's was mandated to do diversity training. So that was type 2. So black Secret Service agents didn't get called the N-word, but they were denied service based on race. Right? So type 2, covert individual. Type 3 is institutional. Institutional. Unconscious. What that means is the institution doesn't know that people within it do type 1 and type 2, therefore make no policy against it. Okay? Professors making sexist, racist, homophobic, whatever remarks that are illegal in a federally funded workplace, but unless the student complains or knows their rights. So LCC is slightly past this stage. Type 4, conscious institutional. Where it's actually legal to discriminate. And the institution is carrying out the law. So examples of this, well, the state of Oregon at its founding and up until, well, I could say up until 65, but Nazi Germany, apartheid, South Africa, Jim Crow South, legal to discriminate. Then, covert, type 5, covert institutional. Discrimination is illegal. But still profitable. So it continues. So what I described with Key Bank, not that Key Bank is the only one that does it, redlining is illegal. But you need the right proof presented in the right order to get them to stop. And the threat of federal prosecution and publicity. They don't like that. Okay, so discrimination still happens even though it's illegal. You have to catch them, and not only catch them, but catch them in the right way. So people can be made impoverished through type 5 all the time. Type 6 is called SocioStructural Violence. That is normal structures in society and people in society who are socialized and educated, they do discrimination on a mass scale. And it's normal and legal. Millions of people are made homeless through sociostructural violence. TAMF, AFDC, welfare, is a form of sociostructural violence. Making people stay poor. Making them unable to be, as the president would call it, socially mobile. Oh, we'll make you go work 5 minimum wage jobs instead, and to get your welfare check, but we won't give you child care. So wait, the kids are raising themselves? Oh, the gang is raising them. Sociostructural violence. Like, why make somebody work 5 minimum wage jobs and not have child care if you know that can't be sustainable? But you're paying farmers and other corporations for not working, not producing food. All right, so with crash, because we're talking about money, the ism is basically if you're above the line, you have privilege. If you're below the line, you have you're targeted. So basically, poor, and there's a slide that will talk about the current minimum wage and the current poverty level, just so you know, and also what If you're in college to get a better job or an education that will lead to a better job and you've never been told, okay, what can you expect to make at this, not only to pay off your student loan, but to have whatever kind of life that you want. I'm a treatment professional, but I can't live on $15 an hour. That's why I teach college. Then I get between 25 and 50 an hour. Plus PERS, some of my money is working for me, plus tax deductions and all that other kind of stuff. But we're lazy. All right, so 200% of poverty level. If your wealth can be wiped out by one bad medical bill or disability, you're not rich. Okay, so you're targeted. So technically, I'm below the line even though I make 80 grand. One bad medical bill, that's it. Above the line, your wealth is sustained beyond work. So rich, middle class, etc. Now this, other characteristics like race is where above the line, it's, for example, this is where the white female writer Peggy McIntosh, who wrote in 1988 of White Male Privilege, the invisible unpacking the invisible knapsack. So it's not about you personally, it's being part of a club that has visible characteristics. Not everybody who is white is white. Some people can pass for white or have been allowed in the white club. So for example, a century ago, the Irish were not considered white. The Irish and Scots were not considered white, nor were the Germans here in America. They were allowed to assimilate, so white was considered white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant. So they were allowed to become white. So above the line, if you can fit in the white club, below the line, non-white. Religion and spirituality. The Abrahamic religions, that is Catholic, Protestant being on the top, Catholic next, Mormon is above the line, and you can gauge this by who's allowed to have a temple. Who's allowed to run for president or be a CEO? And then below the line, who is not? So non-Christian Abrahamic, Jewish, Muslim. Do Jews have more power and privilege in this country than Muslims? Who's more feared? And below that, Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Native, Pagan, Wiccan, Odinist, Rastafarian, etc. Who's on the bottom of the hierarchy? Age, 30 to 50. Your marketability is above the line. So I'm below the line on that. Ability, being able-bodied, temporarily able-bodied, that tab, plus having a mental disability. So below the line, in having any kind of physical, mental, or addiction, puts you below the line. Above the line on addiction, addiction to alcohol or prescription drugs. Below the line, illegal and non-prescription drug use. Sexism, above the line, male. Below the line, females or people who are crossing. Above the line for heterosexism, heterosexuals above the line has privilege, below the line, non-heterosexuals. So these all interact. So you could, and there's also a sheet, this worksheet is on Moodle as a Word document. So you calculate for yourself. So I'm above the line on class, I'm below the line on race, I can pass for Christian, I'm below the line on age, I'm above the line on ability, I'm above the line on addiction, I'm above the line on sexism, and I'm heterosexual. So as an example, you're female, and you're working the same job as a male, what it is now structured so that you're making 78, is it now 78? Did it crack 80 yet? Same job, same qualification, women get paid less. That's sociostructural violence. And it actually might be illegal. So, one of the first things in Obama in first term, basically creating that Ledbetter law, was the Lilly Ledbetter law, where they created a defense, because the law says, the clock starts ticking from when you first got informed of it. She didn't get informed that she was doing the same job as the men, but the men were getting paid more. And that had been going on for like 30 or 40 years. And she didn't find out until 30 or 40 years. Supreme Court said, well, too bad that you didn't know. You had 3 years to file 30 years ago. Too bad you just found out. So the Ledbetter law basically said, no. When you find out is when you find out. And by the way, let's eliminate, gender-based pay discrimination. Equal pay for equal work. Seems like that shouldn't be a revolutionary concept in the 21st century, but it was, right? So that's an example of sociostructural violence where class and gender intersect. Right? So that's why you have to understand there's intersections. So that's part of the hidden rules of power about money. The rationale for discriminating against women is because when the model was a male breadwinner and the female stayed at home while the male won the bread and brought home the bacon or tofu, whatever, then in my house is salmon, but anyway, then that almost made sense. But I was raised in a two-parent, two-wage earner professional family. Harris women work, and they're professionals. So we didn't buy that kind of thing. But now when we have lots of single-parent homes, there ain't the breadwinner is mom, and has been for some time. So if mom's supporting a family, why ain't she getting the same pay? If not better, because like being a mom is work too. In fact, there are many Scandinavian countries where they consider part of national security that after you have your baby, we gonna be paying one of the parents to stay home and raise the baby for the first 3 years. And if not mom, then dad. Because we found out that it eliminates a whole bunch of social problems way down the line. America could do that. Oh, that would be too close to right. So, in terms of looking at money addiction recovery, the basic money health memes: spend less than you make, save what you don't spend, budget. When shopping, stay within the budget, no impulse buys or gambling, or if you do gamble, set a limit. So no impulse buys or gambling except out of your entertainment budget, which presumes that you have made an entertainment budget. So life is like eating a manure sandwich. More bread you have, less manure you eat. Or at least it's better quality manure, right? So one illusion of money: more is better. It's not necessarily a rule, but money may not buy happiness, but it does quiet the nerves sometimes. So what about enough is enough? So if you don't know how to grow money, because it don't grow on trees, but there is seed money and also, of course, weed money. What's a healthy way to look at money? Basically fertilizing and nurturing possibilities. So you got to put some away to be able to have that seed money so that it grows as an investment. So in the program, 12-step program, especially with NA, they talk about shit happens. You might see T-shirts, or even you Google "shit happens in the world's religions," etc., etc. So in academies, random anomalous events occur. So the idea behind this, especially with addicts, is they're often surprised when logical consequences happen to them, and it seems to happen randomly, when it's actually predictable. But you're so caught up in your disease. Why is this stuff happening to me? Why are they cutting off the power just because went up on the E-Web bill went up my nose? That's so mean of them. Okay? So excrement happens. So part of what being an adult is, and using your frontal lobes of your brain, is that emergencies will happen. Plan for them. They will happen. Plan for them. Here's a hidden rule. Have you heard this one? Luck is the intersection of... No? Okay. Luck is the intersection of opportunity and preparedness. If you are prepared when the opportunity happens, good luck. If you are unprepared, bad luck. If you are prepared for the shit happens factor, good luck. Unprepared, bad luck. Especially if it's predictable that it would happen, because it's happened before. There's a saying among my people, what goes around, comes around. Opportunities come, leave, and come back, as well as disasters, too. Some are predictable. Okay? So, often what happens when random anomalous events occur, people are unprepared, and so they expend money in crisis mode. So micturition is another word for urination. So do you piss your money away in a crisis because you don't have a plan? Yeah, often people do. So this is a hidden rule of money. Be prepared for what is predictably and reasonably sure to happen. And there's lots of ways of doing that. Insurance is one way. I had a car, I didn't crash my car. My car had an unfortunate meeting with a large rock in the road. $3,500 later. Now, all I had to do was pay a $250 deductible, and since nobody was hurt, just the car, the insurance company was stoked. Great, we don't have to pay any medical bills? Just $3,500 worth of damage? Because that was a significant rock. Yeah. Oh, no problem. 3 days. Here's a check. Okay. What? I'm a good driver. I speed, but I've never had an accident. The insurance company said, oh, well, I had to dodge away from the center of the road on this dirt road, and The other side was a ditch, and I had to jink back, and the only way to jink is over this rock. Low riding car, crunch. So, prepare. Right? Do you have a plan? Do you plan for the unknown to occur? It's never a question of whether it will occur, it's always when. So, meet the unknown with what you know. Create a budget. Part of that is an emergency fund. Okay? And then from your budget, create a long-term financial plan. So, for example, when we talk about harm reduction, as some of you have noted in your papers, I think somebody did a piece on needle exchange. Purpose of needle exchange is not to stop use. It's to stop infection and developing a relationship so that a person can eventually get into treatment. So it's to stop infection, sharing needles. Now, of course, needle sharing happens even with needle exchange. But overall, it's reducing the harm overall. So, harm reduction. With respect to addictive behaviors, immediate abstinence is not always possible for everybody. For example, with ingestive addictions, going cold turkey, immediate abstinence. Not everybody can do that. So like eating disorders, you can't just stop eating. For example, the whole history of opiate treatment. So the cure for opium addiction was morphine. The cure for morphine addiction was heroin. The cure for heroin addiction is methadone. Do we see a recurring problem here? Yeah. Remember enantiodromia. The problem, your solution to your problem is creating more problems. All right, so immediate cold turkey, while desirable, is difficult for people who do not have the ability to tolerate extreme discomfort. And so how do you go cold turkey from a money addiction? Okay, you have to acknowledge first that you have one, and your money assignment is the first step. So the next step, threefold pay yourself first. So 10% of your gross or net income, whichever is most practical. That's the first part. Plus $1 a day, plus a daily change jar. Okay? Threefold. Then, within that, you have a do you or can you have a savings account? So some people are on AFDC or TEMF. You can't legally have a savings account. I don't know how you secure money, but figure out a way to do that. I'm not encouraging you to break the law. I'm just encouraging you to fight against depression. Sometimes freedom is illegal, particularly if you're a slave. So they want you to be a slave. I don't want you to be. So sorry. All right, so put that money in it or in another secure location. So sometimes if you have a savings account, also your bank sets up an arrangement, a Christmas account, whether you're Christian or not, doesn't matter. Anywhere between $25 to $31 a month or your paycheck. So if you basically did $25 a month, that's $300 to $372 a year. That's it, only if you did that once a month. Obviously, if you have a job and you get paid twice a month, you can do more. In fact, the model that I'm giving you is based on minimum wage. Minimum wage full-time and putting away $110 a month. Right? And that's just from paycheck. That's not even change jar, $1 a day. All right? So once you have that, you can begin to branch out into more aggressive but safe investments, more aggressive than a savings account, which obviously, as we showed you with Rule 72, will take most of half of your life to double. All right? So just to recap the rule of 72, put your money in an investment that you understand even if you don't control it. Meaning you should educate yourself until you do understand it. Don't trust any professional who's not willing to educate you. And since we talked about how that rule of 72 works, just to recap it, divide the interest rate that they're paying you into 72, and that's the number of years your investment takes to double. So, spend less than you make, save what you don't spend, pay yourself first. So $1 a day, daily pocket change in a jar, 10% of gross or net check. Then invest what you save using the rule of 72 and an appropriate investment instrument. And some suggested savings goals. First, an emergency fund. So remember, yes, the other day I said the appropriate use of revolving credit is for an emergency, and only an amount that you can pay off fully with 6 equal payments over a month. That means you've had to have planned for that to happen. Notice how the planning thing keeps coming around. So, some suggested savings goals: an emergency fund, which is 6 months gross income, a fund for debt freedom, and there will also be sharing a technique for snowballing. How many of you have heard of snowballing for debt payment? No, okay, we'll talk about that. Entertainment fund, an investment fund, educational fund, yours or the kids. Retirement, so whether it's IRAs, tax sheltered annuity. So what a tax sheltered annuity is you're paying an insurance company X amount of dollars, and eventually they start paying you when the annuity matures. So while you're contributing, it's tax-free. Tax-free, and then there's a certain amount of tax shelter when they start paying you because it's income. It becomes taxable. Right? And so have savings goals, $1 a day, 10% of gross monthly or net income. So, old school, pay cash or do without. If you must use credit, use it only for emergencies and amounts you can pay off in less than 6 months. Use credit to purchase things which grow in value, for example, real estate, or at least in the case of a car, depreciate slowly if you're going to buy a new one. Cars are not generally good investments, even if it's a Rolls. But if it's basically just transportation, fine. Get one that doesn't break down, that's well engineered. Then also have attainable goals and know where you are now in relation to those goals. Does this seem to make sense? Now I had to adjust, so I've been doing this class for a little over a decade, so had to adjust, and I spent a good deal of production time this afternoon, updating for the current poverty level and the current minimum wage. So credit worthiness. What they like to see is somewhere less than 30% debt to income ratio. What this means is how indebted are you versus how much income is coming in. They like to see less than 30% of your income going to servicing your debt. So here's the irony. This is one of the rules of money. You can't get credit unless you don't need it. But I need credit. Well, till you don't need it, till you're not desperate, they won't necessarily give it to you. I'm not sure, how they worked that with me, but that's how it worked with Sears. You buy our stuff, we'll sell it to you on credit, and then charge you a whole bunch, an arm and a leg. Went up to 30%. So understand that a good credit card rate is, 12 or less. above 20 starts getting predatory. So you want to monitor your credit files, beware of identity theft. Reduce your tax liability and file your taxes. Income protection, which is basically insurance. So for example, life insurance. A good rule of thumb, when I was an insurance agent, and also I'm actually underinsured for my life, like I should basically have $500,000, and I got $350,000. But the idea is this: 5 years income for the primary income earner, because if, one thing sure, death and taxes, right? So basically you only get life insurance if you have a family. Unless you want to compensate your parents for kicking off early, but okay, you basically get life insurance for your family, and then the idea, a goal for how much to get is 5 years income for the primary income. So essentially at 80,000, so that's 400,000. So I'm under by 50. That ain't bad, So same for secondary income, because again, if you're in a couple situation, whoever is the primary tofu winner, you want to cover their life, and then the secondary, so let's assume like a heterosexual couple, right? So if he's making more, and we already know that we can predict that he'd be making more because of sexism, so you cover his income, you cover her, the same level, whatever her income is. Because if we assume sexism, she's doing the child care, you want to basically be able to replace that. You also want to be able to pay for college for the kids, pay off the house, all that stuff. All right? So that equals the face amount. So then if you make a term life insurance policy, so term life means it's a straight death benefit, no bells and whistles like borrowing from it, because that's actually a really bad idea. So term life rather than universal life, whole life, whatever. No. Term life. Usually cheaper, so buy term and invest the difference in between what you would pay for a whole life policy. So straight death benefit. So general principles of debt and credit: buy things on credit that can be paid off in under 6 months to a year if possible. Avoid revolving credit wherever possible. Avoid payday, title, and other easy money legal loan shark arrangements. Not good. Many people do these out of desperation because they can't get credit, and I think they've made them semi-illegal in Oregon, but there's still some people that do it. Or banks do it too. Buy things on credit that appreciate, so basically land, home. So here's another, if you were thinking of a money health as a house, the foundation is basically income to fund your emergency fund. Term life insurance, for example, survivor income for 3 years, fund college, home, lifetime. The Money House Foundation is cash flow, so income to fund emergency fund. Term life is kind of like the roof, a will to keep your property out of state, probate, and in your family's hands. So basically, you plan for the possibility you might die in advance. Have funeral arrangements. I mean, you're not going to be around except as a spirit for your funeral anyway, but you might have some feelings about what that should look like. And your family would want to be spared. Well, what would they want to do? I mean, this is tough stuff to look at. But have I told you about Get Your Shit Together? There is a website. Woman whose husband died and basically had to deal with all that stuff and created a free website with downloadable documents, and it's called getyourshittogether.org. Great site. So, a will, because if you die, the legal term is called intestate. You die without a will, your estate goes to the state. And your family will have a hard time getting it back from them, unless you have a will. Real simple thing to set up. Okay? So, foundation, income to fund your emergency fund, the sides, your ability to budget, spend and invest wisely. The roof is income protection, i.e. insurance. So life, property and casualty, disability, long-term care, or other financial instruments like annuities. And then other investments. This is obviously coming from a middle-class framework, second home, rental property, vacation home. It's before the market too, but again. Investment means that your money, this thing is growing in value and providing another cash flow. Mix of investment funds if you're going to basically work in the stock market or play the stock market, money market funds, etc. So, based on minimum wage. So, $8.95 is Oregon minimum wage, 160 hours is full time. Cut that in half or half time or whatever. So, $14.32 a month gross, $17,000 a year. So $9.10 is going up. The minimum wage is going up on the 1st of January to $9.10. 15 cents, huh? So that's $14.56 or $17,472. So let's say that you would pay $200 in taxes roughly, maybe net $1,200 as a guess. And this is based on, say, $1,160 in expenses with $40 left. So rent, I don't know what you pay for it.
That's nice and cheap.
Yeah, right, I know.
It's like, it's $700, $800.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, yeah.
I know. This used to be $350 when it was $350 around the year 2000, haha, for this market, right? So, food, $350, yeah. Well, it's $10 a day. Yeah, I know. For a family, that's, look, yes, all you're proving is that you can't make it on minimum wage. Utilities, insurance, for cars, that usually probably, savings for 110, if you can do that. So that's single person, full-time, no kids. Right? So here's the poverty guidelines for the current. So there's separate ones for Alaska and Hawaii. I didn't do that, right? So one person, $1,100. So minimum wage slightly puts you slightly above the poverty line, slightly. Two people, actually you're below with two people at minimum wage if only one of them is a wage earner. And so on. So for example, with minimum wage, how big an income house do you need to have? Obviously on welfare, you're way below the poverty line. Doesn't teach money skills or anything like that. So assume a working life of 45 years, minimum wage, 45 years at minimum wage, which I think is some kind of hell, but purgatory, but that's nearly $750,000 over a working lifetime. So, for example, This is a 45-year work life. So hourly, monthly, third line is yearly, and then the lifetime assuming a 45-year work life. So for example, when your classmates working in fast food as a manager is making like $10.50. All right, so yeah, just under 20 grand a year. So we used to, well, we train drug counselors still, so that addictions counselor pays between 10 and 15 an hour. Timber industry used to pay 25 an hour. So teaching college, teaching school, somewhere between 25 and 50. Doctor, lawyer, not Indian chief, but doctor, lawyer. So this market, I'm from LA, so lawyers get 400 an hour. I think for Eugene market, it's like 200. I know my doctor, at least from the fees, gets like 200 an hour, or actually my visit is 15 minutes, so. Yeah, so this is one thing to shoot for in terms of looking at, okay, am I realistically going to get paid this? And if I'm going to have a baseline, is there any way that I could use investments to multiply my income? But I started doing this because people weren't actually figuring this out. They're just like piling on student debt and okay, really, are you going to be able to, one, pay this off, and two, as a consideration. So, when Maria Nemeth's book about let's see, I think it's not Your Money or Your Life, whatever book that she wrote, the spiritual value of money or whatever. Would you still do the job if you weren't being paid for it? Does it bring you enough joy and life fulfillment so you do that? Is it interesting enough for you to do that? Now, of course, I'm a practical Capricorn. Y'all should get paid. Right? But you also don't want to be generating cancer and addictions as a side effect of being in a job that you hate, too. Yes, money can't buy happiness, but it does calm the nerves. All right, so in harm reduction, continue, explain some more. Reduce the immediate harm as much as possible. So we've already talked about that. So looking at your current situation, then where you want to go for optimal money health, how do you get from A to B to financial independence? Okay, so your relationship, so financial independence defined broadly and simply, your relationship with money works to the degree that money is not a major stressor for you. And you don't depend on a job or a government to take care of your financial needs. Your money works for you rather than you working for your money. Okay? So that's a state that you work towards, and sometimes you can achieve it earlier than 65. Now, it is a fact that a person starting at age 25, putting in $25 a month in a mutual fund that's getting 10 to 12%, the compound interest on that will make them a millionaire by the time their retirement age alone. So it's a good habit to get in to start doing that, in addition to whatever money you're making doing whatever you're doing. We can't all do Facebook and Twitter. Okay, so mostly we don't look at money with any conscious intention, but because we are forced to by circumstance. So since I deal with people on both sides of the law, lots of people get involved with the underground economy because of the money. They have lots of money, but they can't show it legally. Not all of us can have bank accounts in the Caymans, etc. Naturally, I wouldn't encourage that anyway, but I do make this observation, knowing lots of people who work in that industry, where basically that industry is supporting whole communities. One example, Emerald Triangle in California, major marijuana production. People trimming pounds of weed need to store that weed in turkey bags. Reynolds, the company that makes, you bake your turkey, right, was wondering why all of a sudden they were selling hundreds of thousands of turkey bags in October. Not Thanksgiving, in October. It's because of the marijuana industry. So, we're going to sell it in bulk now. Imagine that, right? So, like openly illegal, well, that's way beyond medical marijuana, right? Obviously. Major industry practice. Sheriff looked the other way because it's the growers that are like buying new cars and funding the school districts and all that other kind of stuff. Job security for me. All right, so starting with minimum wage, right? $1,100 after taxes, maybe. Your emergency fund would be between $6,600 and $8,500. And if you saved $110 a month, you'd basically take 5 years to reach that minimum goal, doing that. If you save that in an aggressive money market fund, then your money doubles in 12 years. But in a conservative mutual fund, so if you started like at age 18 or 25 or whatever, that's a fair piece of change by the time you retire. Then various things with life insurance. So the snowball debt method basically works like this. The idea is a debt reduction strategy in which it again takes income to fund this, but the idea is that while paying off everything, you kind of make a goal of trying to pay down the smallest debt first, and then using the money that you would, using the money that you would have spent in the debt that you retired, use that money to take the next largest and the next largest and the next largest till it's all gone. And then you have a bunch of money freed up that isn't going to debt service. There are certain things, obviously, that, for example, if you're a homeowner, it's an investment. It's growing theoretically in value, hopefully. Plus there's, market bubbles, etc. But, it's growing. So basically, I'm using that method to basically, paid off the car. So now the next largest thing is a medical bill. The next largest thing is, second on the house for home improvement. Next largest thing is the mortgage itself. So basically my life insurance at $200,000 will pay off the house. And then there's a certain amount for college, et cetera, for the kids. And a college fund for the granddaughter. Right? So yeah, there's not so much that I'm worth more dead than alive, but take care of things. Take care of your folks. So yeah, this is from Wikipedia, and I'm not going to take all the last 5 minutes, but okay. So a first home mortgage is not generally included in the debt snowball, but instead is paid off as part of one's larger financial plan because it's an investment, in a sense. So as an example, credit card A, $250 balance, then $25 a month minimum, which is basically breaking it down to 10%. Credit card B, $500 balance, $26 a month. Car payment, $2,500 balance, $150 a month minimum. Loan, $5,000 balance, $200 a month minimum. Person has an additional $100 a month, which can be devoted to repayment of debt, then roll that into the next largest debt until it's retired. So debt freedom is part of financial independence. And more scenarios. So this is actually already up on Moodle. 2 minutes, thank you. Let's see, what else? I have more information on Mondragon. We talked about the other day. This is from their current site. 83,000 employees, 9,000 students, because remember, part of the cooperative is a college. And there's a Mondragon Corporation in DC, if I read the phone number correctly. So, live long and prosper. All right, roll music. Here are the midterms. There's also one on the site. And I will see you next week.
Online. Learn, unlearn,